Yeah, so there is free entry and exit. Okay, goods and suppliers and buyers can enter and exit easily, and information is equally available. So when something is going to be sold, all interested parties are aware. Self correcting market. So basically in the market, anything that is too bad gets rejected, ignored. Okay, and since it is rejected and ignored, where will people go? Only to things that are better substitutes. So your competition need not always be the person you recognize as a competition. There can always be alternate substitutes. So you may have a business of making a expensive high quality food processor. I'm giving an example of substitute. For this 8,000 rupee processor, average price if you go to buy in a mall, it is between 8 and 20,000. Philips and Murphy Richards and all these company names are there. And these food processors will give you food cut in, grated in certain shape, chopped in certain shape, different ways they can process the food. Some processors will, some attachments will make it a paste, some will make a juice out of it, out of the food that you are entering into the processor. And likewise there is a manual analog substitute for all of this. So if the food processor price from 8,000 becomes 80,000, then people are not going to go get a food processor, or very few people will go and get that 80,000 rupee food processor. So when does the cost of goods suddenly jump up 10 times? That we'll go ahead and see in the inflation section. What I want to let you know is a normal knife is also a substitute for a food processor because it can cut. Then there is a grater, and a normal simple grater which can make grated, convert the food into grated things so that you can use it in a salad or topping. So that is also a substitute. Going forward, characteristics of perfect competition. So as you can see, many buyers and sellers. And just a minute. Yeah. So no one buyer and seller has power to control price in the market in a perfect competition. Many seller means buyers can choose a producer with better price. Many buyers means sellers can all sell product at market price. Okay, lack of demand will not cause sellers to lower prices. Otherwise, what happens is if the sellers keep shrinking, then the if the sellers keep shrinking, then you'll see in the demand and price elasticity what happens going forward. So going forward, like standardized product, one of the other characteristics. Standardized product, one product's producer's offering is identical to another's offering. Okay, car means it is defined or it is standardized that car will have at least 4 wheels. If it is not even having 4 wheels, then it is a auto rickshaw. If it is a three-wheeler, so that is a kind of standardization that the category itself brings with it. Then perfect substitutes like agricultural products such as wheat, egg, milk. Okay, you will find so many substitutes for wheat, like there's bajra and other things and so on. And in eggs also, there are eggs from different regions in the country, so there is some or the other substitute available. Milk also, there is either goat milk, or in cow milk also there is jersey cow, there is A2 desi cow. So there are many substitutes in that category, either geographic or other kinds. Then basic commodities such as notebook, paper, gold. Okay, many kind of alternatives are there to get these things. Alternative providers are there. So price is only a basis for consumer choice. Okay, so now let's look at freedom to enter and exit markets. Producers can enter market when profitable and exit when unprofitable. Regulations do not restrict businesses from entering or exiting. This is a perfect competition. This need not be the case all the time. Okay, we'll see when that is so. Characteristic 4, independent buyers and sellers. So neither buyers nor sellers join together to influence the price in a perfect world. Supply and demand sets the equilibrium price. Independent action ensures that market stays competitive. So what do you do with your supply of goods, that is independent to you. Similarly, other people are also doing what they are doing without telling you and without making an excess, syndicate, cartel, or any other group. So when a group is formed like an association, so if you see now in Mumbai Thane region, there is an association of Xerox and photocopiers, and they have come together and said that the basic price for photocopying a document is now 2 rupees. So any shop which wants to do business in photocopying will set the price at 2 rupees. Likewise, the auto rickshaw unions over here have set the basic price from 18 rupees meter for 1.5 kilometers to 21 rupees a meter minimum for same distance, resulting in an average kilometer price increase from 13 rupees to 15 rupees for auto rickshaws. So these are examples where a group is coming and influencing the pricing. Now, well informed buyers and sellers. So when groups come and influence the pricing, then it is not a perfect competition anymore. Okay. Now let's see when the well informed buyers and sellers condition is met. Here what happens? Buyer can compare prices. So before Flipkart, Amazon, when the online price was not visible, people had no idea how much the margin was available at the hand of the shopkeeper, retailer. But now with that extra information, you just have to go to the shop, show the online price, and then the shopkeeper will be forced to match the online price. That's an example where there is well informed buyer and seller. Sellers know what competitors charge, what buyers are willing to pay. So price taker. So here seller that accepts market price set by supply and demand. Now in the real world, such ideal conditions, perfect conditions need not exist. Very rarely you will find it. They may happen for a short duration and then they may not continue to be as perfectly competitive. Rarely it happens, but mostly it doesn't happen. All above criteria will not be met. But you still need a baseline. That for perfect competition, baseline should tell you what kind of market you are entering, how hostile is it for you as a startup promoter. If you enter a market where you're not able to influence the pricing power of your offerings at all, for example sugar, when government sets the sugar prices, then you cannot increase beyond that price too much. Still there is some leeway. If you can make it look like your sugar is organic, it has added vitamins, nutrients, or some benefit for the body, some people might buy. For example, the alternative to sugar, stevia, is much more expensive than sugar, but then it is an alternative. And see, in the alternative category, there is so much leeway for the manufacturers of stevia to decide the price. So that's the kind of a concern you need to have, that how imperfect is the market and can you influence the price. Some markets come close, such as wholesale farm products. Okay, in a wholesale market you are not really going to try and reach the farthest away person. That is the retailer's job, to go to the farthest village and give it to a smaller population. Wholesaler's job is that everybody will come closer to them, because they have that kind of a pricing power, that all the resellers will come flocking to them. Okay, then let's see a real world example in the context of corn. So thousands of growers decide only how much to produce at market price. Many buyers standardized product, wholesale price is easy to determine. In reality, several factors can interfere. Government subsidies, farmer or buyers sometimes coming together. So even in a commodity like corn, these all factors can happen. They substitute corn with many other grain. This is the situation with grains. They are commodities. In a commodity there is a band. This band can be 5% less in some region, like Bihar and Jharkhand prices will be lesser than Gujarat and Maharashtra, but that band exists across the country. So if the largest producer of corn in the world, America, Indians cannot match that price because they are using very advanced, very large scale farming techniques to reduce their cost of corn per quintal, which Indian manufacturers or farmers will have a hard time to beat because we are not having that much mechanization. Our farm sizes are smaller and it is more labor intended. So that and all differences will be there from country to country. Characteristics of a monopoly. So in a monopoly, market structure largely has fewer sellers, mostly just one seller. Okay, no substitute for the product. One of the most common examples of a monopoly is Government of India. In which areas? Particularly in the case of how our currency should be. So if one fine morning the government says for so and so reason 500 rupee notes and 1000 rupee notes will not work beyond a 6 week or 7 week or 3 month horizon. After that, if you didn't change your notes, those notes are worthless pieces of paper. Then everybody has to rush to change their notes. Cartel is like when an organization of sellers that agree to set prices. I give the example of associations like Xerox Association, Rickshaw Association. Similarly, they can set the base price, floor price. Then the price maker, business without competitors. There also there is influencing ability to set prices. And barrier to entry, obstacle to entering the market, including government regulations, size, resources, technology. So by now, students, you should start thinking that okay, many of these characteristics are what venture capitalists and angels are looking for when I discuss the funding session, and that is so. Silicon Valley investor Peter Thiel has written an entire book on monopolies. The more monopolistic you can show your startup's potential to be, the more interest it will accrue and attract from investors, the more it will manage to grow. That is the context of having a basic overview of economics. You should always be asking yourself, am I positioning my business towards a monopoly or am I becoming a commodity? If you are a commodity, pricing power is limited in that band and you are likely to be substituted. So types of monopolies, there is a natural monopoly where the cost of production is lowest with only one producer. Government monopoly, government owns and runs or permits only one producer. Technology monopoly, one firm owns invention, technology, method. Geographic monopoly, no other seller within a region. Types of monopolies going forward. So in a natural monopoly, let's say example, there is a water company. More often than not, this water company is also government influenced. So before 92, almost everything government had monopoly. Then liberalization happened and many areas started to open up. Adani Power, Tata Power, these power companies were not there before. Only Gujarat State Power, Maharashtra State Power Board, Electricity Board, and so on and so forth. Government undertakings. Now there are become more and more private players. That is what happens in a liberalized economy. So public utilities that require complex systems, economies of scale, average production cost falls as production grows. So now Tata shares have shooten up like anything simply because of one bold declaration. We ourselves will set up the recharging infrastructure. This is what Tesla did in America to get its influence to broaden. When you start doing country level infrastructure jobs which the government itself has a hard time to efficiently put in place, you suddenly have some characteristics of a monopoly. What do you think will happen when Tata puts its own electric car recharging pumps stations all over the country? Of course, in a gradual rollout fashion. That time it will naturally favor competitive pricing for Tata cars to get recharged there. So going forward, types of monopolies: government monopoly, the postal service. So before 92, if you wanted to send some articles, you had to depend on good old India Post. Now there is so many competitors. There is Delhi Valley, there is Gati Courier, yeah. So there is DHL, and so many other companies have come. Now there are competing services and technologies. Since email has come, what is the frequency of sending a letter? Unless it is a application for a college or a university or a job or any other official purpose, letter sending has become almost obsolete. And that is where all the delivery companies started struggling until the arrival of e-commerce. Now people are not eager to send letters, but they are eager to receive articles from e-commerce sellers. So there is a shift happening. Okay, going forward, types of monopolies. There can be a technology monopoly. Okay, let's look at this example. Technology monopoly. Patent. If you have a patent, government is giving you the right for exclusively manufacturing what you have patented for up to how long? 20 years. It is not an infinite right, and this right is given to you simply because you chose to disclose the invention. So you have to be careful. If you disclose the invention too thoroughly, then your competitors will figure out an alternative technology to your technology. You must disclose to get the right of exclusivity. At the same time, you have to make sure your business critical aspects, inventions cannot be directly copied or easily circumvented. So Polaroid is the company that first came up with instant cameras, instant photos. And because of that exclusive patent, their share price kept increasing. People were in high demand of Polaroid cameras for a whole almost a decade until the emergence of digital substitutes. So either the patent will expire in the 20-year time horizon or a new competing technology will come. So I had given you the example, or one of the popular examples is the company case study of Netflix. How Netflix disrupted blockbuster rental DVD CD rental store business in America by sending the DVD CDs to your home. So you don't have to come to the store. You buy a package, a subscription with Netflix, and you get 10 DVDs or 20 DVDs as you had chosen in your subscription package every month. So people saw that the time and the amount of gasoline, as they call petrol, they are burning to go to the store 10 times in a month, 20 times in a month. If that can be saved, and I'm getting a recent selection of films and TV serials to watch at my leisure, then why not? And that's how Netflix took off. But Netflix did not get complacent on its technology to deliver CDs and DVDs. It realized that people are moving from CD DVD to consuming directly media over internet. So in 2010, it further disrupted itself. It put risk it decided to put its entire delivery business at risk and converted itself into a website that streams content, and correspondingly new media licenses needed to be made to make the content available online. So now the producers of the content like the Disneys and the HBOs, they realize that okay, if we give our content to be sold via Netflix, we are getting certain margin, certain royalty. Why not we make our own platforms? So that is why Disney Hotstar has come up. So then Netflix saw that okay, if the content is disappearing, then now I cannot continue to remain only a streaming service. Now I need to be a production studio also. So Netflix started to give encouragement to indie film producers so that they can come and sell their content, which is almost the same quality as Hollywood class, because several Hollywood stars don't necessarily get sign-ups from Disney and other big names all the time. So in their lean period, why not they experiment with their own talents and create alternative content for Netflix? So that's how a lot of Bollywood, Hollywood stars can be seen producing TV serials and films specifically to be launched on Netflix. Simply because the producer gets more royalties on Netflix than they get on other platforms on a case to case basis. So all I want you to understand is your technology monopoly can change from time to time. You need to create alternate technologies. Geographic monopoly, professional sports. So Kolkata Knight Riders, Mumbai Indians, these are teams that are located, and only Mumbai Indians can call themselves Mumbai Indians. Okay, Kolkata Knight Riders only can call themselves KKR, and likewise all the merchandise that comes with their logo, only if you buy from them then it is really authentic. Of course you get duplicates everywhere. If the duplicate manufacturer is caught, then there are different counterfeit laws and provisions that will put that person behind bars. So that is the monopoly of the name of the team. So that the number of suppliers in an area is limited. So if you see these fast food quick service restaurant chains like McDonald's, you will never see two McDonald's across the road. You will never see two Pizza Hut across the road, because the franchisee and the brand owner, they have an agreement that in this 3 kilometer service area, 5 kilometer service area, I am the only shop. Otherwise, why will somebody pay that hefty franchisee fee if there is no exclusivity? So there is physical exclusivity or physical isolation, and a 5 kilometer, 3 kilometer area simply might be too small for two of the same stores to open and service. So that is why geographic monopolies are necessary. So if you decide tomorrow that I want to take a franchisee of a Momo store or any other store, then you must keep in mind all these physical or geographic monopoly concerns. Now let's look at alternative to a monopoly is a oligopoly. Oligopoly means a market structure with a very few sellers offering similar product, less competitive than monopolistic competition. If there are only two sellers, then it is a duopoly, and if it is more than two sellers but it is not a perfect competition, okay, if the sellers are in touch with each other and they decide the approximate price, then it is a oligopoly. It is less competitive than monopolistic competition. Each firm gets large market share, percentage of total sales in the market. Few firms are there due to high startup cost. So steel is an oligopoly. There are only so many steel providers in the country. JSW, Tata, a handful of them. Is almost converging to a duopoly. Likewise, telecom in our country, it is an oligopoly. There is only 4 players, out of which only 2 have the most popular following, that is Airtel and Reliance, and the other 2 that is BSNL, MTNL, and that is I'm considering them as one, and Vodafone. These two are now suffering at the hands of the other two. So even though there are only four names, actively only two. Another example of oligopoly. So let's look at some more characteristics. Few sellers and many buyers. If few firms dominate the market, then industry is oligopoly if four firms control 40% of the market. About half of manufacturing industries in the United States are oligopolies. So this could be breakfast cereals, soft drinks, movies, industrial products. So even in India also, soft drinks, of course there are some local manufacturers which are making Jaljeera and Jeera soda and all of that, but the main large drink providers are Pepsi and Coca-Cola. It's a duopoly. Another characteristic is standardized or differentiated products. Standardized or differentiated, why two different meaning names are there, words are there in the same line? So see, once you start standardizing, everybody will get bored if it is the same looking. So what if cars have four wheels? If only the four wheels was visible, then everybody would get bored. So outside of that, the entire car body is different. There is so much differentiation possible in each model of each car, in each segment. That doesn't change the fact that there are less than, like, there are less than 6 or 7 actually profitable car makers in India, and huge market share is there still with Suzuki, followed by so many other vendors. Many consumer goods are differentiated, so marketing strategies are necessary. Oil, coconut oil, biggest vendor for coconut oil is Marico. The brand name is Parachute. But Marico itself realizes that if I only sell one kind of coconut oil,
Sir, can you increase your volume?
yeah, so if I only sell one kind of coconut oil, then people will get bored, and it will be easy to find substitutes for me in other companies like Nihar and others. So why not I twist the coconut oil and I start offering differentiation in that same category, like aloe vera coconut oil, massage related Ayurvedic coconut oil, then non-sticky coconut oil. So many variations. Marico itself has in its own coconut oil that other competitors may have a hard time matching. Okay, so more control of prices. So each firm's decision about supply and price affect the entire market because they are the giants there. Now in Bharat 6 standard, not a single company's Bharat 6 vehicle is cheaper than its or at the same price as Bharat 4. Okay, BS6 and BS4, not a single manufacturer will find, because they are all together coming and saying, okay, BS6 new technology, less emission, we will all keep it at least 10% or 15% more expensive than the prior BS4 technology. So that is why we will not be able to find any cheaper BS6 cars beyond a certain band. So if one firm lowers prices, others will also lower it. That we rarely see happening. Prices have a tendency to go up, and you will again see more of this in inflation. Now, anticipating competitors' response to price, the output and the marketing can change. Price baiting, it is sometimes called. Little freedom to enter or exit the market in a oligopoly. Because the startup cost of making a new car manufacturing startup is so high that if you have a startup idea in the context of making cars, you will find it very hard to beat the existing incumbents. That is why Tesla, very few investors in Tesla managed to stay invested till today. At all points, every year, Tesla faced some major crisis. Every year, the investor analyst ratings was negative for Tesla before 2020. After 2020, people start suddenly realized, oh my god, we have to be very serious about climate change, and that cars that can drive themselves are a better solution than cars which you have to drive. So if you give the Tesla car instruction to drive you to the hospital, many concerned people saw that the Tesla car more or less is capable of driving to the hospital by itself. This is all a major concern in a pandemic. So Tesla cars became super popular. More bookings happened than it could supply. So these are the kinds of things that happen, that Tesla did to beat the existing incumbents. Some differentiation you have to bring, because otherwise entering is hard in a car manufacturing business. Established firms have resources, patents, economies of scale, and high investment by firms in oligopoly make exit also difficult. Operation is too vast, complex to sell and reinvest easily. See, if there are only 5 or 6 players in telecom, there are only 4 players now. So if you were to make a business in telecom and you wanted to sell your business and exit, because at one point venture capitalists will ask you to give them the exit, either you raise money through IPO for your venture capitalist and angel investors, or you sell it to an existing large player. So many startup companies were sold to Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, because these are the large buyers who will before IPO only merge the company in their internal operations. If such large companies, if the oligopoly doesn't choose to buy, then you have the option of going for IPO. But if there are more players than an oligopoly, then you can possibly auction your business off to the larger players. Because in an IPO, price discovery is uncertain. We don't know what kind of economic conditions will prevail. Anybody that wanted to raise money through an IPO in the month of March failed miserably and would have a hard time justifying valuations even in the subsequent 1 or 2 months. It is only in the last 4 months, 5 months, 6 months that we see an increase in the number of IPOs that are being offered to the public. Gross domestic product. Let's go to the next one. Now GDP is an economic measure of the market value of all the final goods produced and services delivered inside the boundary of a nation during a year. Important. Inside the boundary of a nation during a year. This means that all the goods produced and services rendered within the territorial limits of a nation are included in GDP, whether they are produced by the country residents or non-residents, that is foreigners. GDP focuses on where the output is produced. So these are standard definitions, and you need to refer the slide to remember them. So GDP at market price, it includes all final goods and services produced within the domestic territory of a country during any particular year. GDP at factor cost, it is the aggregate earnings of different factors of production within the domestic industry of a country during any year. So difference between GDP at market price and GDP at factor cost. So we know that market price includes indirect taxes, but they do not accrue to the factor income. However, market price does not include subsidy element, but this amount flows to the factors as factor income. So subsidy, businesses will look for subsidies, and the state which offers better deal, better subsidies, businesses tend to set themselves there. So GDP at factor cost is equal to GDP market price minus net indirect business taxes. So government will not give subsidy from its own money. Government will take the tax revenue generated in the prior year and distribute a small part of it to businesses that it believes will generate more jobs and therefore more taxes. And such few categories of businesses will get the subsidy. So what does it mean when we talk net indirect business taxes? It means indirect business taxes like GST, goods and sales tax, services tax, GST, minus the including the subsidy. So tax is going to the government, subsidy is coming from the government. Take the resultant of that and deduct it from the GDP market price, and then you get the GDP factor cost. Okay. Yes?
Sir, I have a doubt. Can I ask one?
Yeah, hold on to that doubt. Write it down somewhere. Thank you.
Okay, sir.
So net domestic product at market price and net domestic product at factor cost. So similarly, net domestic product is also there. So at market price, it refers to the money value of all goods, final goods and services inside the boundary of a country during any particular year after deducting the depreciation allowance. Remember, depreciation allowance aa gaya, then it is net domestic. So net domestic at market price, net domestic product at market price is GDP at market price minus the depreciation allowance. So when you put a plant and machinery which is costing you 10 crores, you will not get, the government will not say that okay, until 10 crores of your return is generated because you have put this as expense in your business, I will give you tax subsidy. No, 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 no. Government also wants to give only a part of the total cost you have put down in your land and your plant and machinery. Only part of that you can use as a deduction for your business expense in a financial year, and that part is called depreciation allowance, and the percentage is set by the budget, typically somewhere around 15%, sometimes less, sometimes more. That you have to refer to your particular industry, whether it is manufacturing or the services, and you have to see what it is prevailing for your industry and the current budget. Then NDP at factor cost. So it measures the aggregate factor incomes of the residents and non-residents within the domestic territory of a country during any particular year after deducting the depreciation allowance. So here also, just like before, the when you take the GDP from the factor cost and you deduct the depreciation allowance, you get the NDP factor cost. Gross national product, GNP, is an economic measure of the aggregate value of the total final goods produced and services rendered by the country's residents and businesses during a particular period. GNP includes the investment made by the residents both within the country and outside the country, and excludes the income earned by the foreign nationals or businesses within the country. So that is the difference between the domestic and the national. National means what have the nationals with Indian passport done? What is the economic impact of them? Domestic means it could even be foreign nationals doing it. So here are some of the equations for GNP. GNP at market price refers to aggregate market value of all final goods and services produced by the residents of a country. So GNP, wherever you see market price, it includes everything. Whenever you see factor cost, includes the subsidies, same as before. But here it is talking about nationals, Indian passport holders or ration card holders, and so on. Now let's look at the next term, net national product at market price and net national product at factor cost. Wherever there is market price, its other alternative factor cost is usually also there. So net national product at market price, it refers to the market value of all final goods and services after deducting the depreciation allowance. So NNP is equal to gross national product at market price minus the depreciation allowance. So if you take the GNP market price and reduce depreciation allowance, you get the net national product. Similarly at factor cost, so you have to take the gross value factor cost and deduct the depreciation allowance, and you will get the net national product at factor cost. So difference between GDP and GNP. So GDP stands for full form, we have covered. One is domestic product, other is national product. GDP measures domestic levels of production, goods and services in given period of time. GNP measures the level of production in given period of time of any person or corporation belonging to a country. GDP, it is a geographic concept, and GDP shows the strength of the country's domestic economy. Now GNP is an economic concept, and GNP shows the contributions of residents towards the country. GDP is location based, GNP is citizenship based. Okay, so let's come to the concept of per capita. Per capita national income. So remember, in the startup slide, I had given you a slide where the target addressable market was there, and in that the term per capita was also used. So per capita in national income, the amount received by dividing the national income of a particular year of any country by the total population of that period is called the per capita national income, personal income. The amount of income earned by a person in a fixed period of time by participating in directly or indirectly in production and services is called personal income, otherwise your salary, and if it is paid on a weekly basis then it is wages. So disposable personal income, the residue contained after deducting direct tax from the personal income of any person is called disposable personal income, which the bank person will see when you go and apply for a loan. So business cycle. Are you in the right, how do you really understand your startup when it goes for fundraising? A venture capitalist is going to figure out where do you fit in terms of the cyclicity of the economy. All economies have these kinds of cycles of booms and busts. So from a peak where everything is going nice and everything is increasing in prices, people's incomes is also increasing, then correspondingly cost of goods will also increase. So from that peak suddenly something happens like a pandemic and income levels sharply drop. If they drop sharply, then it comes into a trough, then it will start growing again and it will recover, and then it will reach a new high, then again a new recession can come, and then it goes to a trough again. So that's what I meant by cyclicity, the ups and downs of the economy at the level of per people, the citizens or the person's personal income. Yeah, if the personal income is shrinking, then goods and services price cannot remain high. This is in the absence of easy access to debt. If the access to debt is very easy, like the case is now, then even if the personal income is not rising, if the amount of debt available is increasing infinitely, then also the cost of goods can be increased. That is one of the ways in which the people in authority, the big billionaires and governments have figured out an alternative to make the share prices continue to go up. Whether it is good or bad, correct or not correct, sustainable or not, that is a concern for the future generation. So when you are launching your business, can you see whether you can find easy access to debt for your high ticket offering? I had mentioned something similar even in the startup class. So let's look at inflation. Inflation is increasing in the prices. So one of the things you must keep in mind from the earlier slide is that not all countries are in the same place at the same time. One country might be undergoing recession while the other is not. Typically, if the US economy is in recession, then most of the countries that sell to the United States also suffer a recession. But countries like North Korea are perpetually in recession. So there, irrespective of how much the American economy is booming, a North Korean's purchasing power does not increase that significantly, because large international banks are not going to lend money to a North Korean citizen to buy a latest iPhone. Typically, if the North Korean somehow moves to South Korea, his life changes dramatically. Just a 10 kilometer or 20 kilometer, depending on where they choose to land in South Korea, depending on that distance, access to resources can sharply differ. That is why I took the example of North and South Korea. Very close but very different in nature. In fact, you can see similar differences between Pakistan and India also. A villager in Pakistan is going to have a hard time getting access to buying a Royal Enfield bike. But a villager in India will have much easier access to credit, much easier access to loan to buy a Royal Enfield bike. So let's focus on inflation. So inflation is the perpetual increase in the cost of goods. It is almost perpetual. Inflation is almost always happening every year. It will not happen on all the units of consumption. It may happen on some units of consumption, but inflation is always happening, and in the last 18 months inflation has become almost applicable to most of the units of consumption, almost all of them. But in some cases it is the other way around. So if the GST, which was 5% for real estate, and earlier it was even higher than 5%, so as GST has been brought down, so the purchasing power for, and as the loan percentages, the loan interest in the EMI component has been brought down. That is why the inflation of real estate should have been curtailed, but not really. So since access to funds is easier now, you will find that the real estate prices are more or less the same, or in some areas it has gone up. So here's the thing with real estate and inflation in general. Inflation is the lack or loss of purchasing power in your currency. So what you could exchange against a dollar today, the number of rupees, if you need to spend more rupees to get the same number of dollars, your country's inflation has increased. So 30 years back you could get $1 for 4 rupees, roughly 4 to 6 rupees. Now we have to spend 20 times more, nearly 80 rupees, 75 something rupees, and that is still better compared to a country like Turkey. Turkey's overall infrastructure is as good as a developed nation. However, for whatever reasons that we will not get into too much detail, the Turkish lira has lost a lot of its purchasing power compared to the US dollar, much more than we have. Compared to 2019, our rupee has inflated by 2 to 3 rupees. 71 something it used to be there in 2019, now it is 74, 75, 76, in that range. But the lira has lost 50% of its power, so now you need to give double the amount of lira to buy the same number of dollars. Purchasing power is always linked to inflation. So if you want something that an American company manufactures like an iPhone, then a Turkish man or woman has to pay double the amount of Turkish money, lira, to get the same iPhone. So the degrees of inflation. Some normal nominal amount of inflation is healthy, 1 to 3% per year. Why it is healthy is because otherwise your salary will remain the same. So if the inflation is there, then the employers also have to adjust salaries as per inflation and likewise give in a perfect world. Now governments, they come out with these schemes and they increase the salaries of the people every 5 years, 10 years, something like that. Private companies, they do that depending on the scarcity of that particular manpower. If you are a IT professional, now you are in high demand because a lot of non-IT companies are trying to incorporate the benefits of migrating to the cloud nowadays. So that is there. Little inflation is healthy. Galloping inflation is scary. 100 to 300% per year. And then hyperinflation is even more scary. 500% or more per year. And the horrible inflation version of this is Zimbabwe inflation. It is even given the name of a country because of the horrible levels of their inflation. Another name for Zimbabwe inflation, before the term Zimbabwe inflation was called, is stagflation, where the cycle of inflation starts happening. So 231 million %. So now you will see an image of this little Zimbabwe kid holding so many bundles of their currency, and what he will get in exchange for this is a loaf of bread. He has to exchange so many lakhs of Zimbabwe currency just to get one loaf of bread. So some of the factors that cause inflation is the higher cost. Now Tesla cars will become costlier because the number of vendors for integrated circuits that go into making that automatic Tesla car are saying that they have supply shortages. So the cost of the electronics inside the cars is going up, and a lot of car manufacturing has also come down, because see, end consumer of a car is not going to pay double the amount of money for that car because of an integrated circuit shortage. So a lot of purchases in the ultra luxury segment are going to be postponed. Demand pull, too many dollars chasing too few goods. Typically in an auction, what happens? Going once, going twice, going thrice, and then the hammer hits the gavel and then it is sold. But between those three calls, so many people would have said, put a bid for them, for that good. So when the demand is too much, then more bidders for that same few goods, and then the price goes up. So likewise, the cost of that injection, itolizumab and other such rheumatoid arthritis injections that would help patients suffering from the 19 virus, that cost has gone up, doubled. Okay, 40,000, 80,000 for one injection. Then one of the other causes of inflation is the government has chosen to spend more money. When a government chooses to borrow internationally to improve its infrastructure, and for whatever reason the economy of that country is too much dependent on tourists and tourists stop coming, then there is a huge inflation. Just like in the case of Turkey. Turkey had borrowed lots of dollars to build its beautiful highways. Turkish highways are as much as comparable to any European highway and much better than many other Asian highways, South Asian highways in particular. But then if no tourist is there on those highways, and if the international obligation to pay the rent, pay the EMI on that international loan is there, then the purchasing power of the currency starts to depreciate very sharply. So cost of labor increases the cost of production. Cost of labor causing an increase in the cost of production has rarely happened in the last several years. It used to happen in the era where labor unions were very strong. We rarely see this nowadays, where robots have come in large scale and as such have provided an alternative to the labor intensive dependency. And the last one, excessive money growth, loose money policy. So in order to fight off the complete shutdown of global economies, all major bankers, central bankers, decided to start buying corporate bonds. By doing that, excessive money was pumped in the economy, and by doing that, cost of goods has also gone up in a lot of categories. So what are some of the consequences of inflation? So the dollar or the current our country's currency will have less purchasing power as inflation happens, and spending habits also change. Now people are not willing to spend on as many luxury items as they used to, because these luxury items have gotten so high in price. Electronics also, so many gamers have not bought a GPU since the last 18 months, because the cost of graphics cards has literally doubled. If you have an old graphics card, you can sell it at double the price you bought it. 20,000 rupee graphics card selling for 50,000, 60,000, and still there are not enough supply. So creditors are hurt and borrowers are helped. So creditor lent money X or 10,000. Okay, let's say 10,000 units of that currency dollars were lent. Borrower is getting it, and the borrower will repay 10,000 rupees back with interest, let's say. within a year. But on the second year, when the borrower was supposed to return, let's say $10,800 as per the 8% interest, let's say, at that point the value of $10,800 has come down, purchasing power. So that is why the creditor is hurt. So here's an example of a hammer. So if you put $10 beneath your mattress, गद्दी के नीचे आप 1000 रुपया रख दो, समझ लो एग्जाम्पल के लिए, तो वो आज भी 1000 है, 1 साल बाद भी 1000 रहेगा, 20 साल बाद भी 1000 रहेगा, अगर डिमोनेटाइजेशन नहीं होता है। आजकल वो भी कहना पड़ता है, इसलिए 20 साल के बाद 1000 रहेगा, नोट के ऊपर 1000 लिखा रहेगा, लेकिन परचेसिंग पावर सेम नहीं रहेगा, इसके लिए वो येलो क्रॉस मार्क है। तो अभी इन्वेस्ट अगर करते हो एट 5% किसी भी म्यूचुअल फंड में, 5% तो म्यूचुअल फंड्स में निकल के आ ही जाता है ऑलमोस्ट। तो 1 साल बाद शायद वो 1000 का आपको 1050 दिखेगा, ठीक है। और उसके बाद आफ्टर 20 years यू माइट सी ए मच लार्जर अमाउंट। So in the case of this $10, it might compound to $25.27, which is why everybody says you must invest in some kind of growing asset. At the same time, if the inflation is less than the returns on your investment at 3%, let's say, then the $6 hammer in today's dollars 1 year later will cost $6.18, and at the rate of 3% after 20 years it will cost $10.52. So at least you have the ability to buy that hammer 20 years from now. This is one of the impact of inflation. So let's look at the opposite of inflation, deflation. So deflation means that prices are falling. Deflation, too much deflation is also bad. Deflation or disinflation, the level of inflation is decreasing, and too much deflation is also bad. If you can so one side hits the so earlier you saw inflation is bad for the creditor and deflation is bad for the borrower. So if you return 10,800 rupees back to your borrower from the person you had borrowed, let's say rupees, dollars, okay, and that time when you return 10,800, because of deflation, if you didn't have to give that money back for 800 rupees, you could have bought more grams of gold. So one of the barrier metrics is how many grams of gold can you buy for your given currency. So in deflation you will be able to buy more grams of gold, or your cost of the goods is coming down, so instead of buying a 500 square feet flat, you could have bought a 600 square feet flat. But as a borrower, you have bought a 500 square feet flat and you are paying the same amount of money back to the bank plus the loan, EMI, interest. So that is what happens in a deflation, that things are getting cheaper and cheaper. But you who bought earlier is still stuck at the earlier price. So meaning and definition of quality control. So one of the things that matters in an economy is the quality of goods and services offered, so that economy's goods and services are in demand globally. In the context of economics, it is never isolated to just one economy. So when multiple economies are looked at, it is considered as macroeconomics, and within one economy, within one country, when you are looking at the cities, then it becomes microeconomics. The smaller the unit you are looking at, that much micro you can go. The smallest unit is your household, your own house, how the economy of your house works. So let's look at quality. So quality control means the process of control where the management tries to conform the nature and characteristics of the product in accordance with the predetermined standards and specifications. It is a systematic control of those variables that affect the excellence of the ultimate product. It may be defined as that industrial management technique or group of techniques by means of which products of uniform acceptable nature are manufactured. Inspection. So examining product quality. You want to ensure that the standards are conformed. By very requirement of that, you need to inspect. Inspection is the process of examining an object for identification or checking it for verification of quality and quantity in any of its characteristics. It is an important tool for ascertaining and controlling the quality of a product. According to Alfred Beatty, it is the art of applying tests, preferably by the aid of measuring appliances, to observe whether a given item or product is within the specified limits of variability or not. So any manufacturing process will have some variability. All the agarbattis in a box are attempted to make the same length, but if you were to measure it in microns or even in very accurate millimeter scales, you will see that some agarbattis have 1% to 5% more millimeters than the others, and that is it is the specified limit of variability. Nobody will give you a millimeter accurate agarbatti because that is not required for that item. So let's look at objectives of quality control. So when you as a promoter set up your business, then you need to ensure that there are all these kind of checks and balances in place. If you are importing things from China, you need to have somebody in China who will assess the quality of the containers products before it comes to India, to see whether the product conforms to the predetermined standards, to locate the reason for deviation and to take necessary remedial steps. These reasons for deviations can change from product to product, assembly line to assembly line. That is why Toyota, the giant in the aspect of quality, has incentivized the assembly line workers to find out faults and to stop the whole assembly line, or to raise the attention to the nearest manager or superior and get a bonus, to suggest suitable improvements, to develop quality consciousness, to assess the various techniques, and to reduce wastage. So all these things you need to put up in your startup when you are looking at delivering a certain kind of quality. So there are multiple marks for this, mark of quality. It is a brand, it is a certificate that will come. Okay, so when you want to buy gold, don't just buy any gold because it is cheaper. You must always look at hallmark. Similarly, if you want to buy diamonds, then don't just buy any diamond which is cheaper. You need to look at De Beers. These are some of the certifiers that will say that okay, this is of acceptable quality. Similarly, for other items which are not jewelry and which you want to produce and sell, you could see the ISI mark. ISI mark is a certification mark for industrial products in India. It is most popular and recognized certification in Indian subcontinent. This mark ensures that the product conforms to the Indian standards mentioned by the Indian Standards Institute. Indian Standards Institute, ISI, is known as the is now known as the Bureau of Indian Standards. It checks the quality and standard of every product and provides them certification mark. ISI mark is mandatory for certifying products to be sold in India. So when you go to buy a measuring tape in your project work, make sure that you see whether the measuring tape has ISI mark or not. If it is not there, then it might happen that after a few centimeters, like let's say after 70 centimeters or 150 centimeters, the spacing of the centimeter marking on that tape may not be even. So even something as small as a 70 or 100 rupee 3 meter measuring tape requires a ISI mark. So there is another alternative also to ISI. So this is one of the roles of the ISI mark. The goods with ISI mark are subject to proper quality control and testing. They are produced as per the Indian standards set by the Bureau of Indian Standards and thereby have assured quality and performance. They are the best safeguards against impure, bogus and substandard commodities. The ISI mark is a claim by the producer and is not a mere certificate. The mark acts as a third party guarantee about the quality. Manufacturers are liable to punishment if they use the mark fraudulently. So similarly, there is ISO. International Organization for Standardization is a specialized agency for standardization. It is a worldwide Federation of National Standards Bodies in more than 100 countries. Bureau of Indian Standards is the national standards body of India represented on the International Standards Organization ISO. ISO is based in Geneva and has over 200 technical committees to prepare international standards. It has the main objective of coordination and unification of international standards, so that 16-inch tire in India and 16-inch tire in America should not become too different from each other. Standardization, very important. Otherwise, international trade will come to a stop. If 1 liter in India is not 1 liter in America or neighboring countries, then how will you justify the price that you are charging for your goods and services? So let's move on. Theory of supply. So supply schedule for coffee, for example. These are the various prices for coffees for given number of coffees supplied per week. Supply curve for cups of coffee. Price of coffee per cup and cups of coffee supplied per week. The supply curve shows that the same information as the supply schedule. At higher prices, more cups of coffee are offered on the market by people who are in a position to sell. Why? Because see, if the cost of coffee is getting higher, then it means that more new entrants can come and sell. If the cost of cups of coffee is less, then everybody will have this question in their mind: is it even worth it for me to open a coffee stall? Similarly, an increase in supply. So the supply curve shifts outwards to the right when sellers decide to supply a larger quantity to the market at a given price or to charge less for a given quantity. Similarly, a decrease in supply. What happens when the supply is decreased is that the curve shifts backwards to the left when sellers decide to supply a smaller quantity to the market at a given price or to charge more for a given quantity. Theory of demand. So here's a demand schedule for coffee. So the demand curve for cups of coffee. The demand curve shows that the same information as the demand schedule. At higher prices, fewer cups of coffee are desired by people looking to buy. Now, not all of you who are attending would like to go and buy a Starbucks coffee worth 400 or 300 rupees every single day. So that is what it is saying. Increase in demand. The demand curve shifts outwards to the right when more buyers want to buy at a given price or buyers are willing to pay a higher price for a given quantity. So there is more demand for graphics cards now than ever before, and people are actually paying a higher price for graphics cards. That is why the cost of graphics cards is not coming down. Literally at double the MRP is the minimum, if not more than double. So a decrease in demand. So when the curve shifts inwards to the left, we say that the demand has decreased. Theory of market adjustment. So there will come a point when the demand and supply will have to harmonize, will have to come to a equilibrium. So at a price of €1.40 in this diagram, roughly you can see that a surplus occurs because the quantity of cups of coffee being offered for sale is larger than the quantity that people want to buy. On the other hand, at a price of 80 cents, euro cents, many people want to buy cups of coffee but few people want to sell, so a shortage occurs. Only at a market equilibrium point E does the quantity supplied equal the quantity demanded. So market adjustment to an increase in supply. So with increase in the supply of cups of coffee, there now would be a surplus at the original equilibrium price of €1.10. Market adjustment forces should cause the price to fall until a new equilibrium is established at a price of 80 cents. Or 700 cups of coffee will sell at this new equilibrium price. So you as the promoter of your startup need to think, okay, at what price, how many units can I sell? Whatever is your average order value, number of multiple will always be expected by the venture capitalist. At this average order value, how many transactions are you able to incite in the target addressable market? What is your location or positioning that will establish a higher equilibrium where more money is paid for the given number of articles or given number of transactions? So market adjustment to an increase in demand. So here you can see that with an increase in demand, there would be a shortage of cups of coffee at the original equilibrium price of €1.10. Market forces should cause the price to rise until a new equilibrium is established at €1.40 for 1000 cups of coffee will sell at this new equilibrium price. The equilibrium price has risen and the equilibrium quantity has risen. However, this is an ideal case. In reality, to keep increasing the demand, the supply is not increased to 1000 cups, or somehow the number of GPUs are generally not given in adequate supply. Once the number of GPUs increases in the market, the price per GPU that is demanded by people will also start coming down. So that is why a scarcity is maintained. Elasticity. When there is a change in the market price, by how much will the equilibrium quantity change? The price elasticity of demand measures the degree to which buyers of a good respond to a change in its price. Price elasticity of demand is equal to percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price. Price elasticity can also occur at the supply side. So when suppliers respond to a small increase in price by offering a much larger quantity of goods, we say that supply is relatively elastic. If they hardly react at all, supply is relatively inelastic. And that is why the graphics card prices, even though they are at double the price, the supply has not been changed because it is completely inelastic. So price of elasticity of supply, percentage change in quantity supplied divided by percentage change in price. Now price elasticity, you can see in this graph, a relatively price elastic demand. When a small change in price leads buyers to make a large change in the quantity they demand, demand is said to be relatively elastic. So in big billion day, the typical average consumer who doesn't want to spend will also be tempted to figure out how he can manage to get a loan to buy that iPhone, which is offered at a much cheaper price than compared to Apple's own website. Similarly, there is price elasticity of demand, relatively inelastic demand. If buyer's response is weak, demand is said to be relatively inelastic. So now let's look at what is a term sheet. Because all these things, price, demand, supply, manufacturing, and all of the other things, competition and inflation, and all of this will reflect with respect to your offering in your business on your term sheet in some form or another. You are expressing all of these economic factors that will be responsible for the success of your business, or how your business will remain successful in the current upcoming recession. Okay, what are the access to funding that you have outside of your demand to the VC? If you can show your tie-ups with banks that will fund your product, and if you can show that people are willing to borrow money to get your product, that is something that the VC will look at. So all of these things, when they come together on a draft agreement, it is called as a term sheet. So shareholder agreement is completely binding, and it requires a lot of lawyers to sit and do it. Term sheet requires fewer number of lawyers, and it is less binding unless where it is saying it is binding. So there are two parts to a term sheet. One part is flexible, another part is binding. When I say binding, then it means that it is legally you are responsible for all the information you mention on the term sheet, in terms of promises, in terms of actions that you will take, in terms of the way you will allow investors to operate your business. So here you can see outlines the key terms of a deal between the venture capital and startup. Okay, first step in the transaction. If term sheet also is not generated, you can forget about getting any money. Legal documents will follow based on what you have said on the term sheet. Convertible notes. So ultimately, after signing a term sheet, you will not get directly money for your shares, because the venture capitalist wants to have that exclusivity over the shares in the form of voting rights that you as the founder also may not have if you did not insist for some kind of special voting rights for yourself. Yeah. So how does the debt become equity? So there are different kinds of convertible notes. There are compulsorily convertible preference shares. There are compulsorily convertible debt also. So debt sits above equity in the capital stack. Even today, if you go to get a FD done with a bank, then that FD has more priority to be returned to the lender of the FD, you the depositor of that FD, in the eyes of RBI. So if the bank is going to go bust, then it has to first figure out how to pay the depositor. Then only it can look at how to pay the equity holders or the promoters. So these are all things that your investment bankers will sit and structure, how to get the conversions done from debt to equity when certain events occur, usually upon a qualified financing, an equity financing of a certain size or a funding round. So when should you as a promoter use a convertible note? So general advice is like $500,000 or less convertible notes. Then consider future financing needs. If you need more money, do a stock deal or build in a conversion of the notes at maturity. Then delaying the valuation. Convertible notes allow you to treat smaller investment money fairly by delaying the valuation. So there are multiple series. So like I said, series A to F to G, there is no limit as long as your business is growing at a level which justifies the inclusion or infusion of new capital. You can keep raising the series. So but for example, let's stick to series A, convertible preferred stock. What is a convertible preferred stock? Convertible means includes an option for the holder to convert the preferred shares to a fixed number of common shares, usually at a time after a predetermined date. Preferred sits between debt, even convertible debt, ahead of common stock on dividends, distributions, liquidation and redemption. So first the preferred shareholder will get the dividend, then the ordinary shareholder will get dividend. Then value of convertible preferred stock is ultimately based on common stock's performance. So if the common stock's performance, meaning that the promoters and employees who have the common stocks, if they don't perform well in the market, how can the value of the preferred stock increase? So they are both interrelated to each other. When should I use convertible preferred stock? So if you can negotiate a substantial valuation at the seed round, if you don't mind extra legal expense of this transaction over a convertible note round. So see, by very meaning of this, your lawyers have to come into picture a second time when you want your convertible notes or your convertible stocks to be converted into preferred stocks or whatever other stocks you are planning on converting them to, ordinary or whatever. Caution: the investor will own part of your company and may want to exercise control via board seats, veto power, forced sale, etc., so that their investment they can get the return earlier than you. So shareholding is a nuanced game. It is a very detailed topic, and it in itself can go on and on for a whole day, 2 days, as long as you want it, because there is a lot that goes into shareholding. If just the nature of the stock between preferred and ordinary and convertible has so many variations to it. So convertible debt can be converted into convertible preferred shares, or it can be converted into ordinary shares, or you might have to convert it and give money in exchange for those convertible debts, whatever. So depending on what you own, your shareholding pattern is different. So pre-money valuation, the company is agreed upon worth before new money is invested. Post-money valuation, pre-money valuation plus amount invested. Options, the right to buy shares of common stocks in the future at a set price. Pool, number of shares of common stock that you have reserved for options or other equity components. Restricted stock grant, an employer offers you shares of the company but places limitations on your ability to access or monetize that stock. So when you join any major American corporation as an engineer, as a cloud engineer or whatever, Amazons and Googles, they will restrict the amount of shares that you can get. If you finish that first 5 years with them, then you will get access to sell some of the shares in the first 2 years or 3 years, depending on how you have signed an agreement with them, so that the employees do not change companies too frequently. These are some of the tactics that the promoters are putting in place, because at the end of the day, the employees are the engines that are driving the growth. Particularly in software, human capital has become super important. So not allowing your employees to work for your competitors should be one of the aspects that you plan in your business. And for that, whatever restrictions you need to put on the granting of your stock to your employees, you need to place. However, having said that, there are certain norms. You cannot restrict it indefinitely. At some point you will have to let the employees take advantage of their stocks. These rules are given by RBI. So you need somebody like a company secretary who will tell you whether or not the stock grant restrictions that you are putting in place are legally accepted or not. And then coming to profit and loss. So at the end of the day, a typical Indian venture capitalist is still looking for profitable startups. The appetite for another Flipkart is very less in this recession. People just don't want to go for businesses that are not generating a profit. So some of the most basic fundamentals of making a profit are still going to remain. For example, given that you want to attract customers using discounts, you must know marked price minus selling price is the discount. In this e-commerce world, everything is selling at a discount at all times. So what if it is selling at a discount? You should be cognizant of the discount percentage. And at the end of the day, after offering the discount, are you at a profit or gain? That will be always decided by the selling price minus cost price. So that is why when you are trying to supply to a Tata or Birla or Reliance as a business, when you try to do B2B businesses, then all of these giants are connected or have information, have sources of information across the entire supply chain. If you are sourcing a container from somewhere, the chances of one of the executives in these large corporations knowing at what customs duty you have imported that consignment of goods is very high, and based on that they will figure out what is your cost price, and they will pressure you to put a selling price that is more beneficial to them in certain categories. So loss is when your cost price, when your selling price cannot even exceed the cost price by any percentage. So always be cognizant that loss need not only happen directly. You may not intentionally want to sell it at less than cost price. So what happens for e-commerce sellers is they sell at a price, let's say 1000 rupees, and they get a return on that good. So they get the return, and then when they see the cost of sending and receiving the return is only 1050 rupees, and it becomes a loss. So that is something you need to keep in mind, that in the world of e-commerce, always factor in the cost of goods and potential return on that good. And if more than 10% people are giving you returns, then stop advertising that product or increase the price, so such that you can recoup the loss generated by getting those returns. Returns and refunds can shut down a business, so it is very important to keep that in mind. And with that, we have covered most of the topics for today. Thank you. So now you can bring your questions.
Sir,
Yeah, go ahead.
doubt. सर सारे लोग तो इंडिया में टैक्स नहीं भरते, तो फिर जीडीपी और जीएनपी कैसे फिर एक्चुअल काउंट होगी सर?
वेरी गुड क्वेश्चन. सो टैक्स भरने से डायरेक्टली काउंट नहीं होता है. आप अगर कुछ भी खरीदते हो तो आप टैक्स भरते हो, जीएसटी भरते हो. आपने नहीं भरा, किसी और ने, मतलब आपको चार्ज तो लगता ही है जीएसटी का. आप कभी भी होटल में जाके खाओगे और वो होटल के पास अगर एक इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कैशियर मशीन है तो फिर वो उसके ऊपर 5% जीएसटी लगाएगा ही. लाइकवाइज जो लोग रास्ते में बैठ के खाना बेच रहे हैं उनके ऊपर भी गवर्नमेंट की नज़र रहती है. फॉर एग्जांपल, घाटकोपर में खाऊ गली है, वो खाऊ गली में एक डोसा वाला है, वो डोसा वाला बहुत पॉपुलर है. तो एक ना एक दिन तो ऐसा होना ही था कि भाई इनकम टैक्स वाले गए और उसका पूरा सेटअप जानने के बाद गए और उसके ऊपर रेड मारा और पूरा करोड़ रुपया कैश निकाल के चले गए. तो अभी आप कंप्लीटली जीएसटी फ्री हो सकते हो, ऐसा वेरी रेयरली पॉसिबल है. अभी तो बहुत ही मुश्किल हो गया है, क्योंकि अभी सब कुछ में ही आपको स्विगी जोमेटो के साथ बात करना है. अगर आपको स्विगी जोमेटो के थ्रू सेल करना है तो आपको जीएसटी तो लगेगा. कुछ भी ई कॉमर्स में करना है तो जीएसटी लगेगा. तो जीएसटी लग गया मतलब एक लेवल ऑफ टैक्सेशन तो हो गया. मैं कह रहा हूँ कि आपने अपना माइंडसेट है ना पर्सनल इनकम के ऊपर रखा है. मैं कह रहा हूँ आपका टैक्सेशन डायरेक्ट और इनडायरेक्ट होता है. इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेशन को इग्नोर मत करिए, इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेशन से भी ये सारे जीडीपी नंबर्स काफ़ी हद तक कैलकुलेट होने लगते हैं। सो अभी गवर्नमेंट ये नहीं देखेगी कि मेरे को ये जगह से कितना इनकम टैक्स मिला है, गवर्नमेंट ये भी देखेगी कि ये जगह पे मेरा जीडीपी अर्निंग्स कितना है, वो भी देखती है ये सारा जीडीपी वगैरह कैलकुलेशन में।
सर पर सारे लोगों की इनकम तो हमें पता नहीं है ना क्या है,
मैं वही
तो
कह
फिर
रहा हूँ ना
एग्जैक्ट
कि
तो हम
मैं
फॉर्मुलेट
आपको कह रहा हूँ ना कि सारे लोगों की इनकम पता नहीं होगी तो भी उसके लिए बहुत सारा डिटेल्ड इकोनॉमिक सिस्टम्स है। एक एग्जांपल मैंने जीडीपी दिया है, बाकी अभी डिटेल में बात करने को जाएंगे तो काफ़ी लंबा हो जाएगा।
सर फिर एक डिवैल्यूएशन का डाउट था सर,
हाँ जी।
मतलब वैल्यूएशन। सर जापान की इकोनॉमी यूएस के सामने सर, मतलब हमसे भी क्यों लो है उसकी इकोनॉमी? जैसे हम 1 रुपए दे तो जापान के 2 येन खरीद सकते हैं, तो जापान तो हमसे ज्यादा बेटर टेक्नोलॉजिकली एडवांस देश है, तो भी उसका ऐसा हाल क्यों है?
आपने काफ़ी कुछ मिक्स कर लिया अपने दिमाग में। देखो भाई, करेंसी ना आप डॉलर के सामने कितना देते हो उससे इकोनॉमी का लेवल नहीं समझ में आता है। वो जो अभी समझ लो ना, चाइना का करेंसी रफली 6 to 8 युआन देने से $1 मिल जाता है। हमारा 75 रुपीज़ देने से $1 मिलता है। जापान का 105, 106, समटाइम्स 110, 20 येन देने से $1 मिलता है। अभी इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि सबसे स्ट्रांग इकोनॉमी कौन सी है, और उल्टा भी होता है। स्विट्ज़रलैंड का स्विस फ्रैंक, एक फ्रैंक लेने से आपको $1.1 या $1.2 भी मिल सकता है। तो इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि स्विट्ज़रलैंड का मिलिट्री भी स्ट्रांग हो गया अमेरिका से, ऐसा नहीं रहता है। ये जो करेंसी वैल्यूएशंस रहता है इसमें विद इन डिफरेंट कंट्रीज कितना बोरोइंग है वो मैटर करता है। चाइना ने यूएस का बहुत सारा बॉन्ड्स लिया है, इसके लिए यूएस मार्केट में चाइना के गुड्स को एक्सेस है। करस्पॉन्डिंगली बहुत सारा चाइनीज़ गुड्स के अंदर जो कैमरा बन रहा है वो कैमरा जापानीज़ है, तो हर चाइनीज़ फ़ोन पे एक बहुत बड़ा रॉयल्टी कंपोनेंट जापान को भी जाता है। करस्पॉन्डिंगली आप हमारा इंडियन रुपी को भी देखोगे तो बहुत सारा जो माइक्रोसॉफ्ट का लाइसेंसिंग है और क्लाउड का काम हो रहा है उसके पीछे एक इंडियन इंजीनियर बैठा है। तो अभी ये सब कुछ इंटरलिंक्ड है। अभी मैं आपको क्या कह रहा हूँ कि जो 105, 110 येन है ना, वो गवर्नमेंट पॉलिसी है ऐसा। अभी जापान का इन्वेस्टमेंट्स अगर आप देखोगे और अगर जापान चाहे तो वो बहुत सारा यूएस लोन लौटा के अपने जापान येन की वैल्यूएशन को बढ़ा सकता है, लेकिन जापान ऐसा करना नहीं चाहता है क्योंकि जापान अपना इंटरनल कॉम्पिटिटिवनेस मेंटेन करना चाहता है। सिमिलरली चाइनीज़ लोगों का जो युआन है, रेनमिन बी है, वो रेनमिन बी अगर चाइना चाहे तो 1:1 भी कर सकता है, 1:6 या 1:8 की भी ज़रूरत नहीं है। लेकिन चाइना ऐसा नहीं करता है, वो जानबूझ के अपनी करेंसी को डिप्रिशिएट करता है यूएस डॉलर के सामने ताकि अपना कॉम्पिटिटिवनेस इन मैन्युफैक्चरिंग मेंटेन कर सके। सिमिलरली हम लोगों के पास जितना टेक्नोलॉजी है उसको भी हम लोग अगर इंटरनेशनल मॉनेटरी फंड के पास जाएं और बोले कि हमको ये चीज़ बेचना है, तुमको बहुत कुछ ऐसा सेंसिटिव टेक्नोलॉजी है वो बेचने लगेंगे, तो हमारा रुपीज़ भी सडनली 75, 76 रुपीज़ के बदले, 74 रुपीज़ के बदले 50, 56 हो सकता है। लेकिन ऐसा करने में अपना कम्पिटिटिवनेस कम होने लगता है।
यस सर।
हम्म, ओके।
Ranjit sir, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Sir, can we conduct the quiz on Friday instead of Tuesday,
On
instead of Thursday?
Sorry?
Yeah. Can
On
we conduct the quiz on Friday instead of Thursday? There are two reasons, sir. For
Mhm.
class B, tomorrow's day is packed up really because we are having two quiz tomorrow, and your will be third one. Secondly, sir,